Hello everyone, my name is Neha and I'm your English faculty for this particular academic year. Okay. So, have you all ever asked this question, why do you need English? Why do you need English in the beginning? Like, why do you have to study English as a subject? Have you ever asked this question? I'll give you a very practical and logical approach as to why you need English. One, it is the second most used language across the world, and also if you do not know English, how would you comprehend any other subject? For example, if you want to understand a problem solution in chemistry or a physics problem, you have to first understand what is written in the question paper, right? So how would you understand that without knowing the language? And English is the only language which is used in most of the examinations. And I also see that it will be the first language in the near future also. Like India, as of now, English is the second language, but it might also become the first language of people, right? Also, English allows you to think differently. For example, you have math, okay? Imagine these are your neurons in your brain. When you have a solution like 2 plus 2, you know that 2 plus 2 is 4. This is how you think. You think in a very narrow way. You cannot go in any other direction other than thinking that 2 plus 2 is 4, right? But in English, if you have to interpret something, you can see from various areas. Like for you to derive an answer in English, you can interpret it from like this or like this or like this, anyway. So English allows you to think from various perspectives. It helps you to think. It helps you to perceive, interpret. So English is highly important. And also it is the scoring subject, as you know. It is highly scoring as far as your IPE exam is concerned. Not just there, your grammar part is useful for your near future where you'll be writing your competitive exams, right? So before I jump into the lesson part, I want you to understand the question paper pattern. Okay, I'll go through the question paper pattern so that you know how it is.
It's working now.
Okay. So the question paper is for 100 marks. The question paper is for 100 marks. Your 60 marks is only for grammar. Your 40 marks for your literature. Okay? In 60, there are 3 parts in your question paper, part A, part B, and part C. Part A deals with your literature, okay? Your prose and poetry, which is for 40 marks. And your part B is reading comprehension, where you need to read questions and you need to answer them, okay? That is for around 8 marks, 8 to 10 marks. Part C, which is like purely grammar, is for around 52 to 53 marks. So your grammar is the highest scoring thing, because these are like short answers. You do not have any other answer but to have just one answer for that particular question. You don't have any other answer. You cannot interpret like in literature. You have various multiple answers. But for grammar, you just have one answer, and you should, that's the place where you can score well. Out of 100 marks, what do you think is your target? How much do you think would you be getting in this IB exam? Please put down. How much do you think would you be getting? 90? Oh, I see 90. No. Some more. Children, before you put down the comments, see that it is put in everyone, okay? Don't put personal thing, put it in everyone, put that option in everyone, so that everyone can see it. Oh, I just see just one person who is, Amok says 90. No, your score should be 95 plus. That should be your target. The previous year students have done really well. They've got to 98 and 97s, which is like really nice. Your score should be 95 plus, because there's nothing in this. Like in the 60 marks paper, I'm talking about this 60 marks paper, it's like you can just target 60 on 60 because you have questions which are very direct, you know the answers, and that's the only answer for it. So it should be the target, 60 on 60 should be the target. Whereas this particular part, 40 marks, there might be places where your marks might be going for spelling mistakes or structure or something like that. Make sure you don't do such mistakes. I'll take you through all those things where all you might falter. I will take you through everything of that sort. So here you need to make sure that you shouldn't do any mistakes with respect to the structure and the words. This, if you even lose 2 to 3 marks, it's okay. But here you cannot afford to lose 60 marks. It's something you need to get. Okay, as far as literature is concerned, again in this you have 5 parts. Okay, you have 5 parts in that. Part 1 deals with prose. Okay, prose. As if you have your textbook, please open it and just see. You have 6 modules there. Each module has prose, poetry, and short story, right? So part 1 of your question has prose, and you have an annotation question. I'll tell you what annotation is, but just see the parts as of now. Part 2 is poetry, and again you have annotation here, okay? Annotation question which you need to answer. Each question might be of 4 marks. You'll be having options for it. Part 3, see, all this comes under literature, okay? Your literature part has 5 parts. Part 3 has a prose question, but this is question and answer. Question and answer question, okay? Part 4 is poetry again. Again, question and answer type question. Part 5 is short story, question answer type question. So you have 5 parts, you have 4 marks for each question you need to answer, and you have 5, you'll be having options for each question, right? Okay, so what is annotation is, when you read a lesson, these have a few sentences, okay? In a lesson, you have a few sentences which are like important. The author considers it very important, or the examiner also considers it very important. So what he does is, he tries to bring in that, he quotes them and says that you annotate this. Annotate means you have to talk about that line, from where it has been taken, who is the author or who is the poet. I'll go through the structure of how to annotate it, okay? Annotation is nothing but you have a line from the text, either prose or poetry. What you do is you try to understand from where it has been taken, who is the author, who is the poet, and what is the works he has done, and why is this line taken from this textbook, what is the context of the line, and what is it trying to tell. Also, what have you learned from it? Well, don't be excited. It's very easy. I'll take you through it as we go with the chapters. But right now, just understand the structure of it, okay? You have introduction, where you talk about the author, okay? You talk about the author. You use author for a person who writes like the prose and the short story has an author. Whereas if it is a poet, who's a poet who writes poems, right? So whenever there is a poem, if a line is asked from a poem, you write that the poet is, okay, the poet is so and so. If it is taken from a prose or a short story, then you have to write the author of this particular line is so and so, and he has done so and so, whatever. Okay. Make sure that you categorize them well. Don't put authors or poetry words. Okay. The introduction, you try to talk about the author. When you talk about the author, you start with his name. Be sure not to make spelling mistakes with the name. Okay. You start with his name. You start with the works he has done and where he has studied, if required, or what are his titles. Is he called some kind of person? And what is the work he has done for people? Okay, if he has some designation, what is it? Where is the lesson taken from? Okay, from his whatever book or whatever, wherever it is. Okay, that is the introduction. And then you have the context of that line. Context of the line means in that particular lesson, where is that line taken from and why is it taken from there? Okay, like it gives you a scenario or the background of why that line was taken. Okay. Then you have the explanation part. Also make sure that while you're annotating something, you write the subheadings. This is very, very important. For question answers, you need not write the subheadings, but for annotation, you have to go and write the subheadings because these fetch you marks. Introduction, context, explanation, and critical commentary. So explanation, you try to elaborate on that line. That means what are the events which took place before that line was told, what are the events which succeeded, and why, what does the line mean, and etc. Okay, all those things. Well, don't get frightened. I'm telling it again. I will go through this again after the text is done. Like, okay, after each lesson, you have annotation. I will take you through all those questions and I'll tell you how to write them. Okay, you don't have to worry. Explanation, and then you have context. Context is, sorry, you have critical comment. You have critical comment. This is where you write about what you learned from the lesson, like what you learned from that particular line. What is the lesson you learned, or how do you interpret that line? This is something you write on your own. This is your own part where you interpret it. Okay, where you interpret the line and you understand it. Why is it told, or what is the meaning behind it? So this particular critical comment is for your own interpretation. Okay. So far, so good. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. Even if I'm not audible or anything, please ask me if you have any doubts. Okay. So I don't see any doubts there. So far, so good. All fine. Let's start with the lesson. Okay. Please open your textbooks. Please open your textbooks. Go to module 1. Your first story, your first prose part, my mother. My mother, so we'll start off with the module. We'll start with my mother, the first part. All right? Are you all up for it? Okay. Module 1, My Mother, is written by APJ Abdul Kalam. Okay. It is written by APJ Abdul Kalam. How many of you know the full form of APJ? Please put down in the comments. What is APJ? What is the full form of APJ? APJ. What is it? Yeah. So APJ is Abul Fakir Jainuddin Abdul Kalam. This is his name. Okay. Don't get frightened by his long name. It's okay. Don't be frightened by the long name. If you do not know the spelling of this, don't try to attempt it in exam. Okay? Just write APJ Abdul Kalam. If you do not know the full form, Just like APJ Abdul Kalam, your exam, you don't have to try like the Abdul Fakir kind of thing, but remember it so that it will be important. Like you'll know it in the future when you will be asked about current affairs or anything in general knowledge, you will be able to, solve such things. Okay, so this particular person, you know him, right? He is the former president of India. He became the president of India in 2002, and he's also called the Missile Man of India because he's prepared missiles. Okay, he is from a small town in Tamil Nadu known as Rameshwaram. That is where he was born. Okay, Rameshwaram is a small town in Tamil Nadu towards the tip of Tamil Nadu. Okay, he is like he's also called a Vishwaguru. That means he used to teach people, and people used to like the way he taught. So he was called the Vishwa Guru. Like Vishwa means world, like Vishwa Guru. That's a honorary title for a guru who is very good with his teaching. So he is called the Vishwa Guru, and this particular lesson is taken from his book called My Journey. Remember this, it's taken from his book called My Journey. That is his autobiography. Okay. And My Mother is a small excerpt. That means a small narrative which is taken from his book My Journey. Okay. As you know, he also worked with ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, and DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization. Right. So we'll start with the prose part. Please take out page number 2. If you have the textbook in hand, it will be better. Take out a pencil. Use a pencil to mark whichever area you do not understand. Okay. Like mark the meaning. I'll be explaining it. I'll go very slowly. It's okay. I'll be explaining it, and you all mark those hard words and write the meaning on top of it. Use a pencil for it. Okay. Right. So this particular lesson, My Mother, is a very emotional kind of narrative which Abdul Kalam gives, because he talks about his mother, and while he was going to Rameshwaram after his mother's death, he he's assailed with all these memories. He's full of the memories of his mother. After his mother's death, when he was going to Rameshwaram, he got all these memories, and that is when he puts down all these memories into a text format. Okay, this is taken from his book My Journey. That's the autobiography. Okay? So what happens is he talks about the kind of person his mother is in this particular prose, the kind of person she was, how did she as a person shape him, and also how did she, not complain about anything. How was she as a person, and the memories he had with his mother and his childhood in general. Okay, so these are a few things we'll be dealing with in this particular prose chapter. All right. So far, so good. I hope it's all fine. If you do not understand anything, you can ask me. Okay, if you don't have textbook, it's fine. I'll be going through the lesson slowly, and you can write down points which are important in your book or everywhere. Okay? Is that okay? Okay, fine. So here goes the text. Here, this is like given 13 points. Okay, it's like this. There are 13 points in which it is given point wise, and there are 13 points. So each point deals with some aspect. Okay, I'll tell you what it deals with. I'll read the point, and I'll also explain the point. Okay, whenever I'm telling some hard word, when I'm telling the meaning of it, try to write it down. Fine. So here the text starts with a small poem. Many years ago, this is the first point, okay? He starts with a small poem with regard to his mother. Many years ago, I wrote a poem called My Mother, which began with these lines. Sea waves, golden sand, pilgrims' faith, Rameshwaram Mosque Street, all merged into one, my mother. So he says that everything he sees while going to Rameshwaram, he sees all these sea waves, golden sand, and all the pilgrims of Rameshwaram's mosque street. Everything reminds him of his mother. Okay? Sea waves, golden sand, pilgrims. You know, pilgrims are these devotees. Devotees as in those people who go to churches, mosques, temples, they go, they pray and come. All these people are called pilgrims, devotees. So he says that in these two lines, he says that whatever he sees, he is reminded of his mother. In the second point, he talks about his family. He talks about his family and the kind of family he came from and what was his father's name, his mother's name, and what was the father's business or whatever he was doing. My growing up years, which I now remember with such nostalgia. Nostalgia means memories of the past. For example, now you're in 11th class. While you were in, right now, if you think about your 10th class memories or your 9th class memories, and you know you feel very good about it, and you want them to be, you know, right now also. So it's somewhere between sad and happy memories, and you want to cherish those memories. Nostalgia means you're thinking about your memories. You're going down the memory lane, thinking about your past memories. So it may be sad, it may be good, but somewhere in between sad and good memories, you're trying to understand, you're trying to cherish those things. So what is he doing? My growing up years, which I now remember with such nostalgia. Nostalgia, if you actually spelling is Nostalgia, nostalgia, okay, are suffused with the memory of Rameshwaram. And the two people who were the center of my world then, my father and my mother. So he says that he was full of his memories, like he goes down the memory lane and whenever he sees Rameshwaram, he says that two people I remember of is my father and my mother. Suffused means filled with memories. Ours was a middle class family. My father had his own small business besides being the Imam of the mosque. So his father was Imam. Imam means the priest of the mosque, like the person who prays, the head priest of the mosque. And his father also had a small business. Well, his father's name is Zainul Abidin. Okay, that's where he gets his name here. That's his father's name. Okay, and his mother's name is Ashi Amma. Ashi Amma is his mother's name. Make sure you don't make a spelling mistake while writing this particular name. Ashi Amma. Okay. Amma is very common in know the spelling. Ashi is something you need to remember. Okay. So ours was a middle class family. He was from a very middle class family. My father had his own small business besides being the Imam of the mosque. My mother, Ashi Amma, came from a family, one of whom had sometime in the past been given the title of Bahadur by the British. He says that his mother also came from a well-to-do family. His father also was like, okay, go. Both of them were middle class, okay to go with. They had food to eat, they had clothing to wear. At that point of time, it was much like they could not afford luxuries, but they had enough to eat. So mother and father were from well-to-do families. He says that. So here at this point, he gives a brief account of his mother and his father. What is his mother's name? His father's name. His mother's name is Ashima. Father's name is Zainul Abidin. And what did his father do? His father, his father used to do a business, and he was also the imam of the mosque. His mother was a housewife. Okay. And his mother also came from a well-to-do family. How do you know that she came from a well-to-do family? Because the British gave the title of Bahadur to his mother's family. So Bahadur was a title which was given to only few people. So from there you know that his mother is also from a well-to-do family. Well-to-do means rich, not rich, but upper middle class. Okay. So these are the first 2 points. The first point is the poem. The second point, the background. Third point, my mother was a gentle, down-to-earth, pious woman. So here he tells about his mother, what kind of a person she was. She was a gentle, that means very soft natured, very kind hearted. Down to earth. Down to earth means she did not show off much, not very arrogant. She was humble, down to earth woman. Pious means very devoted. She used to believe in God a lot. Okay, she used to be a very devoted believer of God. Pious woman. That means she used to do everything properly for God, the puja and all that stuff. She was a devout Muslim. So APJ Abdul Kalam was a Muslim. Okay. Uh, his mother was a very devout person. That means she was very devoted to the religion, like my father. And when I think of her, I cannot but remember her saying namaz 5 times a day. She used to say namaz for 5 times a day. A devout Muslim, like a proper Muslim. Bending and praying, the look on her face, one of extreme devotion and peacefulness. So he says that the kind of look she had on her face was very peaceful. Like for example, if you go to some temple or if you go to some mosque or church, you see the kind of look the priests have. Did you ever observe that kind of look the priests have? And it's like it's very peaceful, you know. When you see them, you feel, oh my God, such peaceful beings among us, right? So the mother also had that kind of look on her face. She had this look of extreme devotion and peacefulness. She had a large family to look after, and that was where most of her energy went. That means Abdul Kalam belonged to a very large family. Like they used to have joint family system in the past. Mostly now also, like if you see in the Indian culture, you see that there is this joint family system, right? Everyone who lives together in the house. Okay, you can't hear. Can you hear right now? Can you hear? Okay, can you hear me now? Now can you hear? Okay. So let me just adjust this. She had a large family to look after, and that was where most of her energy went. So she had a very big family. That means everyone lived together. So this was a joint family, and everyone were living together. All his cousins, brothers, uncles, aunts, everyone were together. Okay, living in the same house. Our family consisted of my siblings and I, as well as our relatives, like my grandparents and my uncles, all of whom lived in the same house, as I told you. Providing for everyone was always a stretch on the resources. It was not a time of plenty, least of all for us. So he says that for for to provide food to everyone, it was not a time where everyone like could get much of it. They cannot go and eat in restaurants like us. Like right now we do now. If you don't want to cook, you'll go eat in restaurants. That is not a culture back then. So they had limited resources. They only had little food for everyone. They had food to eat, but very limited. Okay. Um, Providing for everyone was always stretch on the resources. Stretch on the resources means they have to use the resources in a very limited fashion. That means if you have some rice, you have to like, use it in a limited way. That doesn't mean you go hungry. You are given food, but in a very limited fashion. It was not a time of plenty for anyone, least of all for us. We had a good steady income from my father's business, his coconut groves and ferry business. So what did his father do? He had coconut groves, that means coconut plantation, and he had ferry business. Ferry means boat business. So he had coconut plantation and he had boat business. But that just about covered our expenses, and there was never any question about indulging in luxuries. Indulging means getting yourself into luxuries. So they did not have luxuries as such, but they had enough to eat, enough to wear. Okay, so they never had extra luxuries. They had enough middle class family. In the fourth point, so in the first 3 points, we discussed one point, two, what is it, two, write down what is it, the second part, and the third part. The second part deals with what? His father, his mother, and the kind of background they come from, right? And the third part deals with he coming from which kind of family and the kind of person his mother was. Okay. Fourth point. In these circumstances, my mother remained the ideal partner for my father. He says that my mother was very ideal. Ideal means, the perfect partner for his father, made for each other kind of a couple. Why? She said and understood frugality. Yet there was never a trace of irritation or anger in her about the way we lived. So she understood frugality. Frugality means being economical. Where to use what, not going extravagant with resources. Like if you have little money, she knows how to use that money, how to use it in a very limited fashion. So she was always a support to her husband, his father, Abdul Kalam's father. There was never a trace of irritation or anger in her about the way we lived. So she was never irritated. She was never irritated or angry about uh, how they lived. They were like medium middle class, so she never was complaining that I have to do so much work for so many people in the house. She never complained. She did her work very peacefully. Almost daily, not only were many members of the family fed and looked after satisfactorily, but also we usually had umpteen people drop by who would be asked to stay back and eat with us. So not just she just did not cook for people in the family. Sometimes relatives also used to jump in. They also used to come in, eat, and they were asked to stay back in the house and then go. Now also like if relatives come, you'll ask them, oh yeah, please stay back for today, go tomorrow, something like that. So that was the Indian culture back then. Where you ask relatives to stay back and you provide a caring atmosphere for them. Hospitality is called. So they were asked to stay back and she never complained about cooking for those people also. Already it's a huge family. She cooked for such huge family. She also cooked for people who came in as relatives, whoever. So far so good. Is it okay, children? Like, I can see a few comments. So far so good. I hope so. Okay. So now that I think about it, I feel that she cooked and served for as many, if not more guests than there were members of the household. Yet, this was accepted as normal and no one really remarked on it or thought much about it. Such was the Indian concept of hospitality once upon a time. So she never complained that I had to cook for so many people and all that. And she used to cook for more people who were like families already big. She used to cook for people who are more in number than their own family also. Yet she did not complain about it. And he says that probably this was the kind of culture and back then it was the Indian culture and nobody recognized the effort of women down the lane. Okay. In the fifth point, so here we have done 4 points. Okay. In the fifth point, he talks about his childhood. This is the first memory he talks about. Okay, with his mother. Mine was a happy, secure childhood. One of my earliest memories is of eating with my mother sitting on the kitchen floor. We ate of banana leaves, rice, aromatic sambar, homemade pickles, and coconut chutney for the staple foods. So he says that this is the first memory he recollects. Okay, he says that he had a very happy childhood and he was once eating with he used to generally sit on the kitchen floor and he used to eat with his mother. Like mother used to serve and he used to sit and eat on a banana leaf. They used to eat. In Tamil Nadu, Kerala, this is the normal fashion where you sit down and eat on a banana leaf. They did not have plate system back then. Okay. One of my earliest memories is of eating with my mother sitting on the kitchen floor. We ate off banana leaves. That means we used to sit and eat on banana leaves. Rice, aromatic sambar, homemade pickles, and coconut chutney were the staple food. So this was the staple food of them. They never went for some great things. This was like very staple. Every day they used to be served rice. Aromatic sambar. Aromatic means very good smelling sambar. Homemade pickles and coconut chutney. Her cooking was deceptively simple, and till today I have not eaten sambar that balances the tart and the spice taste as delicately as hers did. She says that her cooking was very very simple, but I did not find that kind of sambar which tastes so good. That balance in the sambar with spices and the tart means sour taste. Okay, the sour and the spice taste was so very well balanced that he did not taste such kind of sambar ever before, ever after his mother's cooking. Like he never tasted it anywhere else. So I have not eaten sambar that balances the tart and the spice taste as delicately as hers did. It is again in connection with food that another anecdote from my childhood comes to me. Anecdote means incident, okay? Anecdote means incident, remember. So from this memory, he goes on to another memory of his childhood. This is the first memory of his childhood. Now he goes on to another memory of his childhood. What happened during his childhood with respect to his mother. The sixth point. During the World War II years, when was the World War II? How many of you know that the years in which World War II happened? You know, okay. During the World War II years, food was being rationed and there was a general shortage of nearly everything. So there was this shortage of food, limited resources. They did not have much of grades or anything, which was it was generally short. Like the shops also did not sell much of it. The resources were low. My mother and grandmother did their best to tide over those days, stretching the supplies as much as they could, cutting out any wastage, often reducing the portions on their plates so that the children had enough to eat. So what did they do, grandmother and mother? They used to cut down their own food and they used to supply, they used to give it to their children. Okay? So even if they did not eat anything, it was fine for them. Even if they did not eat, like sometimes they slept hungry. Okay, so they used to stretch those resources. They used to use the resources in a very limited fashion. One day, my mother had made chapatis instead of rice. So rice, as you have seen, that is the staple diet of the family. But one day, mother made chapatis instead of rice. I sat at my place on the floor and ate with relish. That means he enjoyed eating as she rolled out one fresh chapati after another. So she was cooking chapatis and he was keeping on eating, like he kept on eating chapatis, one after the other. They kept coming and I kept eating. I was hungry little boy after all. When I had finally had my fill, that means when I was full, when my stomach was full, I picked up my banana leaf plate and walked away to wash up. So he picked up his banana leaf plate and walked away to wash his banana leaf plate. Later that night, my elder brother took me aside and scolded me for the first time. So that night, what happened? His elder brother, he took Abdul Kalam and he started scolding him. What did he scold? How could you be so blind, Abdul? He started. So he said, how could you be so blind? At first, I had no idea why I was being pulled up. So Abdul Kalam did not know why he was being scolded by his brother. I stared uncomprehendingly at him. Uncomprehendingly means without understanding. He did not understand what was going on. Abdul Kalam did not understand what was going on. Then he softened and explained. Did you not notice that there was just enough for all of us to eat 2 to 3 chapatis each? He said that, we only had 2 to 3 chapatis each to eat, and you ate more than 2 to 3 chapatis, and now mother and grandmother have to stay hungry. Amma will never say no to you, but because you kept eating, she kept serving you. And tonight she will go hungry because now there is nothing left for her to eat. So he says that mother has to go hungry because she does not have anything left to eat. You have eaten all of her share also. Okay. So this is another memory when, yeah, this is the second memory which comes. after his first memory of he sitting on the kitchen floor and eating with his mother. And this is the second memory which he gets after the first memory. The second memory is of World War II days, and he was born in 1931, and World War II happened from 1935, 39 to 1945. So when World War II started, he must be around 8 years of age. So that is when this incident took place. That's the sixth point of the chapter. So far, so good. I hope you're understanding it, okay? Or is it boring? I hope it's not boring. Okay. Yeah. Seventh point. That moment of shame, of heartbreak for my beloved mother, who looked frail, yet was the toughest woman I knew, broke my heart. So what he says that, or when he understood that he had eaten his mother's share, he says that that moment of shame, like he felt very ashamed of it. He felt like he's done a big mistake and he feels guilty about it. Of heartbreak from my beloved mother, who looked frail. Frail means she looked like very weak. Frail means weak. Yet was the toughest woman, but she was a very strong, tough woman. I cried to myself, too mortified to show my face to anyone, and it was only after a few days that I could bring myself to look her in the face again. So he was very guilty about what he did. So he couldn't look into the face. When you do something wrong, you cannot look into the eyes of the person. You've noticed that? So he was also very guilty of what he has done. So he couldn't look into the eyes of his mother, and later, after a few days, he became normal. Her love drove her to share her food with me without a second thought. And after my brother showed me the truth, I could never again eat without making sure there was enough to go around, especially for my mother and grandma. So what he did is, this is the first lesson he learned. Okay, this is the first lesson he learned, that he needs to take care of the others' needs before his own. You before me. This is the first lesson he learned. Make sure you note down this point. Okay, to take care of others' needs before your own need. That's the first lesson we learned after this particular incident which took place. So I could never again eat without making sure there was enough to go around, especially for my mother and grandmother. So he used to he used to see that his grandmother and mother had enough to eat. Okay? In the eighth point, I left home fairly early in life as I wanted to pursue my studies in a different larger town. As a result, I could not remain my mother's little boy for too long, unlike many of my friends. But her generosity and caring spirit stayed in my heart always. So in the eighth point, he says that he wanted to do higher studies. He wanted to study. So he had to go out of his town. Unlike other of his friends who stayed back in the same town, he had to go. APJ Abdul Kalam had to go outside his town to study for higher studies. Okay. He says that he could not remain mother's little boy for too long, unlike many of my friends. But her generosity and caring spirit stayed in my heart always. So the kind of person she was, generously giving, very giving, she keeps giving for people. And caring spirit, the kind of caring she had, that stayed in his heart forever. Okay, those are things he learned from his mother. The kind of personality he built later on in his years were actually influenced by his mother. In the ninth point, again he talks about the third memory. This is the third memory which he gets. Okay. Again during World War II years, when I was about 8 years old, I took the job of a newspaper delivery boy. So he took the job of a newspaper delivery boy. He used to deliver newspapers to different people in the place. My day began well before dawn. Dawn means morning. Morning in the morning, it began well before early in the morning. When I had to go for my tuitions, my Quran class, do my newspaper rounds, go to the school, and then return home well into the evening, when I had to study for the next day. In all this, my mother stood by me like a rock. So he had to go to newspaper delivery, he had to go and go for his tuition classes, Quran tuition classes. He had to go for his study, everything. Mother did those small things which he considers it to be, which are like huge things. She stood by him in every aspect he did. Okay. In all this, my mother stood by me like a rock. Early in the morning, she would wake up well before me. So before he woke up, she used to wake up, get the water ready for my bath, and then call me. So she used to make hot water, and then she used to call Abdul Kalam for bath. My mother saw me off and would be waiting for me to come back an hour or two later when I have to go with my father to the Arabic school for my holy Quran classes. So initially, before he went to newspaper delivery, she used to wake up, make water, provide him call, then wake Abdul Kalam up. Okay. After he went in, she used to wait for him to come back so that he can go to the Quran class again with his father. Okay. So she did all those small chores which are very significant. As I went from place to place during the daytime, all I had time for were the meals that would be laid out for me promptly. So he says that he used to be outside most of the time because he didn't have much of time. So his meals were laid out promptly. Promptly means at time. His food was laid out at correct time. I knew that many times my mother reduced her own share so that I could have enough. When I once questioned her, she only smiled and said, "You are a growing child. You have so much to do all through the day. This is what mothers look out for. Don't worry about me." In the evenings, when I returned home hungry and tired, she would again help me clean up and prepare for the next day. So what happens is she used to sometimes not eat and provide for children. She used to give her share of food also to her children. Okay, so he asked her once, "Mama, why do you do this? Why do you give your own food to us?" So she says that you are a growing child, so you need food to, grow. You are always outside. You need food for strength and all. You should eat first. So she was very generous that way. Generous is giving. And also in the evenings when I returned home and hungry and tired, she would also help me to clean up and prepare for the next day. She used to do all the these small things, these are very significant in one's life. When you actually do not have the presence of your mother, you will realize that what she has done for you is like huge. You don't recognize it right now, but later, slowly, when you have a void in, if your mother does not exist, and you know the kind of things they did, significant things they do or they did. Okay. Here in the 10th point, he talks about uh, again a memory. Among all my siblings, I was always given priority in taking a place by her. So he was like a pampered kid. He was very pampered. Once I remember I fell asleep with my head in her lap. So he once fell asleep. That means he slept off with his head on her lap. We all do, no? We go and sleep on mother's lap. So he also once went and slept on his mother's lap. She sat quietly, her hands softly caressing my hair and cheeks. So her hands were like, they do like this, kind of massaging. Caressing means something like this, like this, like this. So her hand softly caressed my hair and cheeks. Her touch, the most precious balm for my tiredness. So whenever she used to touch me like this, it was like a balm for tiredness. His tiredness used to just vanish when she used to touch like that. Unknown to me, from somewhere deep within, tears sprang up in my heart. He says that I don't know why, but I slowly started crying. He says he slowly started crying. Before I could stop them, they started flowing down. David's tears started flowing down. My eyes were still closed, yet the tears ran. So he's like he closed his eyes, but yet those tears came down his cheeks. They dropped down to my folded knees, and seeped into my mother's side. So those came and those drops went into mother's side. But she did not stop her caresses. She kept on doing her whatever caressing on me. She knew exactly what was giving rise to those fears. The extreme tiredness of a boy suddenly trying to be a man. Her fingers ran tenderly through my hair, comforting, soothing, and understanding. So, why did he cry? Because he understood what his mother was doing. He was slowly becoming a man. Like when you were a kid, were you very conscious about what your mother was doing? No. Like she used to do a lot of things, but you were never conscious about it. She was like, yeah, like you never understood the importance of what she's doing for you. But slowly, while you grow up, you understand that your mom, your mothers are doing a lot for you. All those small acts are something which are very significant, and they tend to be something which we all remember later on in the years when we grow up. So now, because he is very grateful for his mother, because he has that gratitude feeling in his heart, so he cries. So here they say that the extreme tiredness of a boy suddenly trying to be a man. A man is like he's conscious that his mother is doing so much for him. So in the 11th point, he talks about his mother again, the kind of person she was. This simple lady, born and raised in a small southern Indian town, was perhaps like many other mothers in our land and beyond. She did not step out of the house and take part in the affairs of the town. She never stepped out of the house. She used to stay inside the house, take care of all the chores. Chores means the works inside the house. She never went out and did, never involved herself in the society around. She did not make a career in the way we think of it nowadays. Career in the way we think of it nowadays. Like modern women, you see, they go work and all outside. She was not like that. She was a very devout homemaker, a housewife. Yet, within that, she served everyone and God with utmost devotion, selflessness, and piety. Selflessness means I don't consider about myself, it is you first. So it is you first and me next. So she had this kind of selfless behavior. Devotion, right? Like godly devotion when you go to a temple or something, the kind of devotion. And she was piety. Piety means religious, very stubborn with her religion. She followed every aspect of her religion. It is this lesson that I have carried from her life. What is the second lesson? What is the first lesson we understood? That is you before me. That means it's your needs before I consider my needs. And the second lesson is that it does not matter how large or small your sphere of activity is, what comes finally is the commitment that you bring to the job that has been ordained for you in this life. This says that commitment is important. Whichever small task you do, commitment is important. You should commit yourself to the task you do, even if it is like cooking for that matter. She did everything with commitment. She never complained about it. She never was irritated or angry about it. She did everything with a kind of commitment towards that work, finish that work, right? So this is the second lesson we learned. That is to be committed to whatever you do. The first lesson is you before you. So in the 12th point, he discusses about the death. My father lived to the age of 1 or 2 years. It's like good age till, yeah, 1 or 2 is a good age. My father lived to the age of 1 or 2 years. When he died, he was 1 or 2 years. When he passed away, he left behind a family that included 15 grandchildren. So he says that the family had 15 grandchildren. That means imagine the number of kids and the number of grandchildren. A big family. His passing away affected me deeply. I came home from my work at Tumba and sat by my mother for a long time. So he was working in Tumba. He was a scientist back then. Okay. So when his father passed away, he was working in Tumba. So he came home then. After a long time, he came home. When I had to leave, she blessed me in a choked voice. So when Abdul Kalam was leaving that place after the last rites of his father, mother blessed him with choked voice. Choked voice means like the voice is just not coming out properly. I was in the thick of building the SLV-3 rocket and work we can't be. That means thick of building the SLV-3 rocket means he was very busy doing the SLV-3 rocket and work we can't be. But I was fully into work. I couldn't think of anything else other than work. She never once asked me to stay back. So she never asked him to stay back. Father passed away, can you please stay back with me? No, she never asked that. She just blessed him in a very choked voice and he went away again to work with his SLV-3 rocket. So now he questions himself. Should I have done so? Should I not have been so preoccupied with my work and instead spent time with the old lady who I was never to see again? So after that point of time, his mother passed away after his father passed. Like after some point of time, his mother also passed away. So now he questions himself, like, should I have stayed back there? Should I have been with her? Been with this old lady? So now he questions himself. I have asked myself this and do not have an answer. He says that I don't have an answer. My mother passed away soon after my father died. It was perhaps fitting that she would not live alone without the man whose side she never left for over 80 years. So his mother and father were together for 80 long years. Okay. So he says that yeah, probably it's kind of very normal for a person to die when the partner is dead. Like for 80 years they've been together. When the father dies, it's kind of normal for the mother to die because they were like made for each other kind of a couple. Okay. She stood by him in every aspect and he was also a strong support to his mother. His father was also a strong support to his mother. So after some time she also died. Okay. So Abdul Kalam says that yeah, without each other's presence they could not live. So I think it's understandable. In the 13th point, this is the last point. After I received the news of her passing away, I made my way to Rameshwaram. He says that after he received the news of his mother dying, he went to Rameshwaram. Memories of her assailed me. Assailed me means hit me hard. Memories of her were hitting hard. The two people who had created me, not just as their child, but molded my thoughts and personality, were now no more. He says that those two people who actually, supported me, who made the person I am today, are no more. I don't have their support anymore. Okay? I would have to live out the rest of my life without their guidance. He says that the rest of the life, there is no one to guide me as such. But I knew one could not live lifelong without the other. One could not have lived long without the other. So he knew that if his father died, he knew that somewhere in his heart, he knew that mother also couldn't live for long because they were like together. Those birds were together. So I knew one could not have lived long without the other, and that is what comforted me as I returned to the mosque, where I had learned to pray with my father. So that is where he says that comforts him to know that yeah, they couldn't live with each other, and it's understandable. And so now he goes to the mosque to pray, or during the last prayer, he's gone to his mosque to pray. I returned to the mosque where I had learned to pray with my father. The azan from the mosque once used to bring all of us together, our parents leading all the children in the prayers. So he says that the azan, that means from mosque you have this prayer which is out everywhere, right? So that's the azan prayer. The azan from the mosque once used to bring all of us together, our parents leading all the children in prayer. That means everyone used to pray together in his family. So when he listens to the azan, he gets this memory of praying with everyone in the family. Now it is a sweet reminder of a beautiful childhood. It is a sweet reminder of a beautiful childhood, of parents lost to time, of a mother who understood her boy's deepest feelings, even if they remained buried in his heart. So he says that I've lost my parents, but they have shaped me. Those people are the ones who shaped me, and I had a very beautiful childhood and a mother with deep feelings who understood her child even without he talking about it. You know, mothers gently understand even if you do not tell them about things, right? If you're sad, suddenly they come up and they'll be like, "What happened to you? Why are you sad?" Okay, so they understood everything even without you telling them your deepest feelings. So he says that a mother who understood her boy's deepest feelings, even if they remained buried in his heart. Okay? It's a very beautiful, beautiful story where you have a very emotional account of his memories, his childhood, the mother, the kind of person she was, and how he was shaped by his mother. What are the lessons he learned? It's a beautiful story by Abdul Kalam. Like it's a small narrative which was taken from My Journey, the book My Journey. Okay, so this is it, children. This is the story. You have a glossary here. Okay, I I just want you to have your textbooks in hand. If you do not have it, it's okay, but make sure that you have your textbooks as soon as possible. So if you do I have to recapitulate it? Let me recapitulate it. He goes on from the poem, talk about his family, okay, father, mother, what they did. Then he goes on to his childhood. He talks about the food, rice, sambar, and he has never eaten that sambar anywhere else. And then he goes on to talk about another memory of his time in World War II, where he kept on eating chapatis and he did not leave anything for his mother, and mother slept hungry. So then again, he talks about his mother, the kind of person she was. She was tough. She was looking frail, frail means thin and not very strong, but she was tough within. She was tough woman. Okay, so yeah, he learned a lesson that no, I should consider others' perspective before mine, others' needs before mine. That's the first lesson he learned. And then he goes on to tell that he went away from Rameshwaram to pursue his studies. Then again he comes back to this memory, third memory of World War II days again, where he tells that mother used to do everything like putting hot water, putting everything in place. Where he used to go, come back. He did not have much time outside, like inside the house. So he was mostly outside the house, and mother used to take care of every small detail, small things, very significant things in his life. Okay. So then he goes on to tell about once another memory where he was sleeping on his mother's lap and he slowly starts crying because he was grateful for the things she has done in his life. And then he talks about the kind of person his mother was, and the second lesson he learned, that is being committed to whatever you do. Small thing also, just be committed to it, finish it. Okay? And the kind of person again, devoted, selfless, piety, religious woman she was. And 12th point is with the passing away of his parents. Yeah, when his father passed away when he was 102 years. And slowly afterwards, after some time, his mother also passed away after his father passed away. And he says that it is understandable because they were made for each other. They couldn't live without each other's presence. And 13th point tells that his mother was so like she had deep emotional feelings and she could understand her child without even him telling about his feelings. Okay, so he says that he's like very lucky to have such a mother. So that's it, children. That's the story he talks about. These are in 13 points. I hope I'm clear. Yeah. These are 13 points in which he talks about his mother. After this, you have glossary, you have exercises behind the textbook, okay? You have annotation and question and answers. We have 4 questions in annotation, 4 questions in question and answers. Tomorrow we'll deal with these exercises, okay? We'll deal with the exercises, grammar in this consonants, missing words, comprehension, all these exercises, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Now I'll go through the glossary, okay, the meaning part. Nostalgia, a feeling of pleasure and also slight sadness when you recall a period in the past. Nostalgia means your memory lane. When you go back in your memory lane, you try to recall the past. Suffused means spread all over or filled. I was suffused with memories. That means I was filled with memories of down to earth, very sensible and practical. She's a very down to earth woman, or he's a very down to earth person. That means very practical, very humble, not overreactive or showing attitude. No, it's like very humble, down to earth person. Indulging, allowing oneself to enjoy the pleasure of. So I indulged in eating ice cream. That means I love eating ice cream. Allowing oneself to enjoy the pleasure of eating ice cream. Okay? Indulging means you are trying to extract pleasure from that particular act. Frugality, the quality of using only as much money as food, as much money or food as is necessary. That means using things in very limited fashion. That is frugality. His mother used to be very frugal. That means she used things in a very limited manner. She knows where to use what, like extra buying, extra cooking. She knows how to use things in a very limited fashion. So what is the opposite of frugality? It's called spendthrift. Those people who uh, throw shell money on different things. Like nowadays, you see most of them they go and buy things which they don't even need. They buy some what showpieces and all. You don't need them yet. You don't even want to buy them. You just want to buy them. That's called spendthrift. Frugality is when you know what to buy. You know what and when to buy. Okay. So umpteen means many, umpteen resources, many resources, umpteen benches, many benches. Hospitality means friendly and generous behavior towards guests. So hospitality means like when guests come, you say, yeah, array, you come here, you sit here, go, get out of the house. You say that no. You respect them. You show a kind of caring atmosphere. You give them a atmosphere which is caring, which is respectful, right? That is hospitality. Friendly and generous behavior towards guests. That's hospitality. Aromatic means having a pleasant smell. The smell is pleasant. Aromatic means the smell is pleasant. Okay. Um, Tart means sour taste. As I told you, the sambar had the balance of tart and spices. That means the balance of uh, sour taste and the spice taste was balanced properly. Tart means that sour taste. Pulled up means criticized. He was pulled up. So Abdul Kalam was pulled up by his brother. He was like his brother criticized him. Why did you do that? Why you brainless? Okay. Why you blind? So that is pulled up. Mortified means feeling ashamed. Feeling ashamed for whatever he has done. So he was mortified that he ate his mother's share also. Tuitions means, right? You go for tuitions. The act of teaching, especially to people in small group classes, with contributions, right? And all. Caressing, touching gently, showing affection. Caressing, I told you, like, touching gently and then showing affection. Affection means care and all. Soothing, comforting, having a gentle, calming effect. Her face was soothing. Whenever you see into her face, it was like very peaceful. You could find that peace in the face. So it was soothing to see her. It was soothing to hear the music. That means when you hear the music, you find a peace in your heart. That is soothing. Ordained, ordered, commanded by fate or God. That means um, he's ordained to do. That is his fate. That is his destiny. Okay. In the thick of, this is an idiom, in the thick of. That means involved in very busy work. So Abdul Kalam was in the thick of doing SLV-3 rocket. So he was very busy with the SLV-3 rocket. Assailed means coming up in a very fast manner. Disturbed, come up suddenly and strongly. So the memories of his mother assailed Abdul Kalam. They hit him strongly. like memories were kept, they kept coming in his mind. Assail means fast and hitting strongly. Azan is a call to Muslim public prayer chanted by a specially appointed person. Okay, so Azan is that prayer which you hear out of mosques in evening, in the morning. If you see it, you have this mic sound which is going on, right? Azan is that the prayer which the Muslims do. So this is it, children. For today, it's the explaining of the lesson. I've given you the author's background. Okay, make sure that you know the author's background so that you can annotate well. And you need to make sure that you do not do any spelling mistakes in the paper while writing about the author and also while writing about the explanation. Like when you're giving the explanation for the sentence or the question, you should be very careful. So, thank you.